Hello and welcome to the Pod of the Damned. I'm your host Ian. Joining me as always is my co-host Nico. Nico, I have one question for you.
Yes.
Are you horny? It's just really funny.
That is the weirdest line in this movie, so is it?
It's the first and last lines
Like,
in the
it's
film.
so out of place.
You know what makes that? What makes it actually really, really better?
It's the weirdest thing.
It makes it really better because I just asked that, and my flatmate just came in the front door. Just as I went, "Are you horny?" How you doing, buddy?
It would be even better if you went. That's what would have been funny if you did that.
Our listeners on the downloads are really gonna be wondering what the fuck is going on.
I feel like, what the fuck are they doing? We were pulling our cheeks to make it sound
Well,
like
no.
we're
If they want, if they want to find out, they can watch this live or subscribe to our Patreon.
That is true. How is it we're not even through the full intro yet and we're talking about wanking?
I
That's
mean,
just disturbing.
We're less than 90 seconds into the episode. At least you've got clothes on.
I have.
I know, because you have to have clothes on now.
I know it's annoying because it's like literally you're like, I'm ready in 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm just putting clothes on now.
Can I just tell you right now, it's not annoying. I am more than happy for you to have clothes on. Before we get into the episode, thank you very much to Boomer for the sub. Welcome on in. I hope you're doing well. Don't forget, folks, Boomer will be joining us next week live with his co-host Gabby for next week's episode. But anyways, don't forget, guys, we are a horror podcast that deep dives into a different topic every single week in our quest to create a leaderboard of the best and worst horror movies of all time. This is episode number 75, and in today's show, we're talking about the movie Horns. And something a little bit different.
Me and Boomer are no longer friends, by the way.
Oh. Why?
Yeah. Because he made me do that fucking movie last week.
Oh, what, the Blair Witch Project? No, I mean, I don't believe Boomer made you do the episode last week. I believe we were already doing that episode, and you just tried to weasel your way out of it.
I thought we had an agreement.
Well, guess what, Nico? You thought fucking wrong.
That motherfucker.
You thought very, very wrong. Don't forget, guys, if you would like to support this show on our social media, you can do so. We're on Twitter at Damned Podcast. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Pod of the Damned. You can email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com, and you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Pod of the Damned. A wild cat has just appeared in Nico's camera.
I don't know what he's doing.
Oh, no doubt we'll take a piss on your head at some point during the episode.
Knowing my luck, the way the day's going, yeah.
Saying
no, he's been very spooky, so he might be
fine. So there's a couple of things. Obviously, on last week's episode, we discussed the Blair Witch Project, which, Nico, you were just such a big fan of.
Oh yeah, it's like I gave it a 10 out of 10. That's how much fuck off. That shit should be buried in the fucking middle of wherever the fuck it is.
Yeah,
wherever they found those tapes, that's where they should dig it up and bury the cast. Okay.
Okay, so I think it's safe to say, not a fan.
No, not a fan.
Not a fan. Okay.
No.
So. I mean,
overhyped shite.
We've had a few people respond to us about that episode and our thoughts on it. And I thought we could maybe just do a little bit of discussion around that before we get into this week's movie topic, Nico. What do you think?
Is this going to be how wrong I am?
I mean, there's no, actually, completely not. But we'll start off with Wren, who sent us a very lengthy message on Facebook. If you go to the post where we published this episode on our Facebook page and go to the comments, Nico, you'll see the length of Wren's reply. Wren also will be coming on the show in, I think, 3 to 4 weeks.
I'll look it up. You bastard. I'll look it up after.
Okay. So basically, I'm not going to read it completely through. I'm just going to highlight a couple of the points. First off, he said, great episode. absolutely spot on, Nico, of course. But then he goes very wrong very quickly, because he says, obviously agreed more with Nico this time around, so he's immediately lost the point.
Nah,
he says, however, during the episode, I think an interesting topic of debate occurred here, but was kind of, he thinks we brushed over it a little bit quickly. The question of whether or not we could have included the marketing campaign as part of the review of the film, which we did talk about. We talked about that a little bit. We talked obviously quite in depth about the marketing campaign. We maybe didn't go into super discussion about whether or not we could include that as part of the film. I believe that we could, whereas you believe you believe slightly less so. And I think, you know, it's interesting because so basically the question of whether or not you can include marketing as part of a review of the film, I agree with Nico and say no, because that's a time and place thing. I was 17 when this film came out and got to experience all the hoopla going into it and seeing it in the theatre, regardless of if I fell asleep or not. Felt like an experience because of the hype going in due to the marketing. However, if you showed a 17-year-old this movie today, they aren't going to care about the marketing. They might go cool, but ultimately it's not going to add or subtract anything from their opinion of the film itself. Which I understand. I understand that opinion. However, this is potentially where I would maybe disagree with that opinion, Nico, because obviously there's what, 10 years between us? Ish.
Yeah.
So when Blair Witch Project came out in 1999, I was 8 years old. So I wasn't really old enough to understand the hoopla and the time and place nature of that, and I still think that that's a really important and really impressive part of this film. So that's where I maybe disagree with that suddenly, unless I'm just completely, you know, the one-off, you know, I may be the exception to that rule. But, you know, that...
Well, when you saw the marketing and when you saw the movie, how long was the difference?
I couldn't actually tell you, to be honest.
Like a month?
Oh no, I saw this movie much later. A month. No, I saw this movie much later. Anyways, Ryan goes
how old were you when you saw the movie?
I was mid-teens, I think. I don't think it was until maybe 2006-ish I actually saw Blair Witch Project. It was one of the ones I came to slightly later.
So the hype probably got you. You wanted to see it then. And then when you finally saw it, you remembered the hype between it. It probably got you more because of that.
Do you think the hype's still there 7 years later, though?
Oh, yeah. Especially something that was that big.
But then the bloom was definitely off the rose with it at that point, in terms of we knew, you know, it wasn't like real, and the hype of it had maybe left us a little bit. I don't know. Anyway, you know, it's we agreed that in the last episode, Nico, that we were never going to agree about it, but I just wanted to bring this up because I like getting feedback from our listeners as well.
So do I, but I think on that subject, if you never saw that marketing campaign, because the thing is, you can make a great trailer out of most movies.
Yeah.
And they just emphasize that tenfold.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you should include that in the actual movie, because some of the best trailers I've seen were shite movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, like, again, you know, trailers obviously are there to purposefully lure people in for the movie, and you can definitely make a really shit film look good in a trailer. You know? Wren goes on to say some other things about Cannibal Holocaust and Paranormal Activity, which, you know, if you want to, you know, go and have a discussion with Wren, then, like I say, go to that post on our social media. He does finish it off saying, with all that said, I think it's important to mention the marketing for the film, especially of ones that went big with it like this, Paranormal Activity, Cloverfield, and others. But I don't think it should have any bearing on the review of the film itself, since it's irrelevant to the actual content of the film. So I think I respect that opinion. I respect that opinion. And listen, this is one of the reasons why, you know, we don't just give mine and your ratings, Nico, at the end of an episode, and that's it. This is why we include, you know, critics and listeners and, you know, audience scores from around the world. This is part of the reason why we do that, because we have all got very differing opinions on this and on very other films, and we want to incorporate as much of that as we can. So, you know, I thought it was worth, you know, mentioning. The Amateur Destroyer on Twitter also says, I have to say I agree with Nico on most points. I think our hatred...
Wow.
I think our hatred wouldn't be as strong if the movie wasn't so beloved, if that makes sense. I feel like a crazy person when I hear everyone say how good Blair Witch is. So they're possibly saying they think they hate the movie even more because it's generally quite well loved, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like how can so many people love this piece of shit? That's what the point of view of that is, and that's where I come from.
Yeah. So, again, differing opinions. So, Boomer says.
So you started off with two that agreed with me. So fair, come on, hit me with it. Everyone loves your one.
Well, Boomer's just commented. By the way, Blair Witch is that good. So. Get that right. Anyways.
Put down the crack pipe. Put down the crack pipe.
Anyways, Nico, we're not here. He does want to say, and so is Blair Witch 2, which, that's something that you said Blair Witch 2 was good.
It is better.
Okay. Anyways, we are not here to discuss the Blair Witch Project. I just want to get some of those thoughts and opinions in. Shall we get into this week's movie discussion, Nico?
Come on then,
okay.
Horny bastard.
Let's do it, you horny fuck. We are talking all about horns. This movie was released in 2013, was directed by Alexander Aja, and stars Daniel Radcliffe, Juno Temple, and Max Minghella. The IMDb plot is as follows. In the aftermath of his girlfriend's mysterious death, a young man awakens to find strange horns sprouting from his forehead. Before we get into any of the topics that this movie discusses, as always, Nico, this movie will, at the end of this episode, be rated and put onto our leaderboard. This is the 71st movie that we've covered on the show. Where do you think Horns is going to rank on the leaderboard?
This is a fucked up film, so I don't know. Like, I genuinely, I don't know if the critics loved it. I don't know if folk loved it. I got recommended to watch this. I can't even remember who recommended it to me, so sorry about that. I'm not putting a shout out for a change. Normally when folks say watch this movie, I'll give a shout out to them. Can't remember who it was, sorry. But yeah, fucking, this is a fucking weird movie. So, I genuinely don't know how well it was received by everyone. I don't remember much about it when it came out.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the first ones from when Daniel Radcliffe, left Harry Potter. So
when did the Harry Potter franchise end? I can look that up, to be honest. But yeah, I think this was definitely still in that sort of time period where he was still very typecast, wasn't he? The final Harry Potter movie came out in 2011. This came out in 2013. So yeah, it's only a couple of years after.
Yeah.
It is one of his first projects. He did a couple of other things. He did Woman in Black in between Harry Potter, the last Harry Potter, and this. So he'd already done another sort of horror movie. I have to say, I think Daniel Radcliffe has gone on to be a pretty fine actor.
Yeah, I like him.
I quite like The Woman in Black. I have to say, I don't hate this. And we will get into it. And he has done some fun other stuff. There's been Jungle and Guns Akimbo.
The Swiss Army Man.
Yeah.
Swiss Army.
He's weird.
All that shit.
He's done some stuff, but I think for a lot of people, he will always just be Harry Potter, won't he? Do you think? Oh
yeah. So on that, right? Mm-hmm. With this being so weird and everything, I'm thinking it's probably going to hit about a 7.5.
Oh, you think it's going to be quite high?
I think so, because I don't remember anyone ever telling me this was shit.
Okay, so
you know what I mean? Normally folk when they talk about this, and I've talked about this with a couple of folk, nobody so far said they don't like it.
Okay, well, a 7.5 would put this movie in 27th place on our leaderboard, which is the same score that Scream got. That's
quite high.
That is quite high.
Yeah.
Or is it? It might be low. You never know.
Yeah, this is genuinely one of the ones I 100%. I've normally got an inkling, and I'm just going with what my gut is saying this time. It's weird.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's always interesting sometimes to review movies like this where you really just I like the majority of films. I know sometimes, we can talk ourselves up and talk ourselves down for scores, and some movies are difficult to rate. But this was genuinely one of them when I was coming into this recording thinking, I'm really not sure exactly how to rank this.
I'm the same. I still haven't got my score. I've normally got a rough. I've like when I come into this, I normally go like I'm going to score this between like a 7 and an 8.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't have that this time at all.
No, it's very strange, and I'm not really sure quite how to deal with that since it is so strange. But I'm sure we'll get it. I think for me is I'm just not really sure on what criteria I'm going to rank this on, because, and it for a lot of people it is a criticism of the movie. I don't think this is a perfect movie. I don't think this is a great movie. I'm never going to consider this to be like a top tier, sort of horror. But I'm not sure if I'm sort of judging this as a horror film, if I'm judging this as a comedy, if I'm judging this as, a love story. It's kind of a murder mystery in there as well. I'm not really sure just still what this movie actually is. And I think that is a problem.
See, I think it's more like, this is going to sound pretentious as fuck, but it's like a Shakespearean tragedy type scenario.
Oh, it's
like
absolutely it's absolutely a modern day Greek tragedy.
Yeah, See, that's a good way of putting it. It is proper. It tugs at heartstrings in some places. In other places, you're fucking hating people. In other bits, you're loving them. It's one of those things where it pulls at everything. That's why I quite like it. It has comedy elements in it. It doesn't have that much horror elements in it. I'm not gonna lie.
No, it doesn't. It definitely obviously deals with horror themes, which is obviously why we're covering it on the show. Is it an issue that I personally think it needs to be a little bit more committed to one or two of these sort of subgenres, because yes, whilst I like the fact that we've got some horror themes in there, you've got that bit of murder mystery, there's a little bit of love story in there, and there's a bit of comedy in there, I did just feel that there's a little bit too much going on.
See, I quite liked it because the way that it starts off like a buddy kid movie, right?
Yeah.
Where they're all becoming friends and everything. They all fancy the same girl. They've all got the girl there that is giving them hand jobs around the back of the bike sheds. It's mentioned, So all that stuff is in there. The buddy movie type thing. So it's like fucking. It starts off like that, and I quite like that.
Yeah.
It's a nice slow build up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like at the end of this movie we should still have an idea of what we've just watched, and we really don't with this.
But I quite like that in this one.
No, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing. I can just see why that might not appeal to a lot of people.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, I don't think that'd be overly appealing. For me, I do think it's a little bit of a problem. I can get past that because I kind of enjoy the majority of what we get on screen. I maybe do wish it had maybe just committed a little bit more. I think we could be a bit more focused on, maybe taking out a couple of the aspects. If we, does this really need to be a comedy movie?
I think you need the comedy bits in it to lighten the mood.
Yes,
otherwise it's just about the guy trying to find who killed his bird.
I'm not saying eliminate the comedy elements whatsoever, because I think you'll actually find that sometimes, even in the darkest of horror movies, you will always potentially find a little bit of those comedy elements. What the movie we're going to be talking about next week, whilst is possibly one of the most grotesque films that's been put out there for a mass audience, and that's got some very comedic elements to it as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about completely eliminating it. I'm maybe just talking about having a slightly less of a focus on it and pushing that focus maybe more onto having slightly more horror element to it, or focusing more on, the murder mystery aspect to it, because there doesn't really seem to be a lot of focus in the movie about, actually sort of hunting down who did it until very near to the time where we actually find out who did it. I know during the movie, Daniel Radcliffe's character is constantly obviously professing his innocence and things like that, but we don't really seem to be focusing too much on finding out who did it rather than finding out all of this backstory.
Yeah, like, and I think it got a good balance on everything, to be honest, because it's a nice little build up with the whole kids thing. It's a good little, like, even the little sex scene that where they fucking finally hit it off in the actual hut thing, you know,
Of
like where
course
they
you,
finally get
of
it on.
course
It's a
you
nice
love
little touch in there.
what a nice little touch in the sex scene.
No, but I mean,
Classic
it's not
Nico.
like a gratuitous sex scene for no reason, right?
No.
It's there. It's them falling in love. They have their wee sex scene done, dusted. You don't see that much apart from a titty. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It, it it's a nice little one. It's not like a, oh yeah, they fuck, they're gonna die. You know
No.
what I mean?
No. I'm just saying. I think overall, I wish there had maybe been a little bit more focus, because one of the things I think about this movie is that it is a long movie. You know, this movie comes in
Yeah, it's like 2 hours.
Just shy of 2 hours, and I think given the type of movie it is, I think this movie is too long. And I think
See,
if you,
I thought it was alright. I thought it was good.
there's a point in it where I do think, right, come on, let's start moving things along a little bit. But anyways, just to catch up with the chat a little bit, Boomer says Daniel Radcliffe is pretty great. Thing about him is that he picks stuff that is interesting, which is true. He does seem to be an actor who is a little picky about what he decides to do. He doesn't sort of throw himself into everything. One of the comparisons I often I have when, you know, we talk about actors who do that is the comparisons between The Rock and Batista. Two people who obviously come from very similar backgrounds, one of whom I think is an absolutely incredible actor, and one of whom is The Rock. You know, The Rock's made tons and tons of money, has made some of the biggest films, but I don't think The Rock really has a movie legacy. Whereas,
Yeah,
I think Batista has picked
like,
incredible films,
he's got an
roles.
action movie role, and that's it.
Yeah. Whereas Batista actually is a really good actor. So, anyways,
like, don't get me wrong. I think The Rock could be a good actor. It's just you never get to see him try.
Exactly. Boomer also says, I'm going to rate this high. It's a great fairy tale dream-like feel. Carrie's in the chat says that she says she's glad you've got clothes on, Nico. And we've just been banned. Excellent. Then Boomer then goes on to say, I think the murder mystery was the weakest part. It was obvious who the killer was, but I thought the journey was enough to carry the film, and the touch of mystery kept it entertaining. He does also mention we also, as well as
on that, that's the bit that annoys me, right? So them with the whole, oh, she gave me the necklace. As soon as they do that whole scene,
it's done. You know
he's the killer, and that pissed me off. Well, that pissed me off.
They do try to give you that red herring, don't you, that it possibly could be the brother. You know, because he wakes. Yeah, because they show you that flashback of him waking up with the bloody rock in his car. We see that he's like hefty on drugs. They try to sort of allude the audience that, you know, there might have been an affair going on between, you know, Marin and the brother, and they do kind of toy with you that for a little bit. But the mystery aspect for it, and this is where I'm kind of saying that I think if the movie is too focused on too many things, because the mystery aspect of this movie is actually pretty weak when you actually come down and think about it. They let it out the bag really quickly, and then they kind of take it from there. I kind of also think, and I'm going to jump straight to it, I kind of also think that the ending of this movie is a bit of a letdown.
See, I sort of like the whole fallen angel thing.
No, it's not that I don't like
his wings burning and all that.
It's not that I don't like the concept of it. I don't like the execution of it.
Oh, the special effects are gosh in it. But I like the idea of it.
I just think they could have made it so much. Like, they should have made it so much grander, and so it should have been so much bigger than it actually was. I think that's another issue in general with this movie, is it feels like it wants to go for like massive, but it always just feels like it's kind of containing itself a little bit.
Yeah, like the bit where it's do that shoot thing, naked, jump in the water, that whole thing, and then he gets caught under the logs,
Yeah.
right? You can see that if you watch that again. Now, I never noticed this the first time, but see when you watch it the second time, that's the same scene shot from two different angles that they repeat twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was just saving money. Is basically what that was. That annoyed me a little bit as well.
Well, I'm not actually, because it's one of those things that I actually looked for, and obviously one of the things that we always do in this is try to sort of figure out finances on a film. I actually couldn't find out what this movie was made for. I couldn't find that anywhere. I know what it made, or what the internet's saying it's made anyway.
Really?
But I have no actual information on the budget, which generally means it's a really small budget. So maybe this movie was made for next to no money.
Yeah.
I don't know, like,
maybe that's why they did it then.
One of the things that baffles me is that this movie does actually have some pretty big names in it. This isn't a movie that's got Daniel Radcliffe and then a bunch of nobodies in it. Daniel Radcliffe himself, like you say, is just 2 years off the back of Harry Potter ending, which is one of the most, for as much whatever people might think about Harry Potter, and we're not going to get into that, because that's a whole other can of worms that we won't be discussing today. But Harry Potter is one of the most successful film franchises of all time. And,
So which house do you belong to?
Oh, I belong to the House of the Damned. Thank you very much. Carrie says in the chat, sorry guys, I started to watch this movie and got bored.
Fair enough.
Not for everyone. Boomer also reminds us, because we were obviously talking about getting a hint of tit, that we also get dick in the bar. We do get a full dick in the bar.
Yeah, that bit was just like, that came from nowhere. But it fits perfectly, because everyone knows that guy in a bar.
Does the dick fit perfectly, Nico?
I'll bypass that. So, are you genuinely telling me out of every venue you've ever worked in, you couldn't spot the guy that would love to just walk about with his dick out?
Oh no, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Anyways, back to what I was saying. You've got Daniel Radcliffe there, who at this point is probably, just coming off the back of Harry Potter. But you've also got people in, like, James Remar is in this. Big actor. Kathleen Quinlan is in this. You've got Heather Graham in here. David Morse, who is like, he's one of those actors that you'll never know his name, but you know who he is. As soon,
like Heather Graham, I forgot she was in this.
Yeah. And it's such a small role for someone so famous.
Yeah, I know, and she plays it perfectly as well. She comes across like that cunty dame. I loved it.
Yeah, well, she's played this movie before, and that's that pretty much exact role before in previous films, which I will get to later on. But yeah, so speaking of the Harry Potter thing as well, because I think it maybe has contributed to the lack of success of this film. Because, are you okay, Nico?
I've got an itchy nose. I don't know why.
Yeah, okay. Do you think at this point? Because I don't think it's something that people would really suffer for now with Daniel Radcliffe. Do you think at this point, though, in terms of being in other things, that Daniel Radcliffe was still very much typecast?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, people just couldn't get,
because they're going in to see. Well, I think the only movie before it was Woman in Black, was it not?
Yeah, that was the movie he did in between the last Harry Potter and this.
Yeah. So they're expected to see him be his usual self, but saying that, his accent is fucking gosh in this.
Yeah, what is he going for?
It's some sort of American. I don't know how American, but it's some sort of American in this.
Was that your attempt?
No, that definitely was not my attempt at American.
Oh, I think that was your attempt at an American, and if that's the case, Nico, that's really embarrassing.
I'm not even attempting it now because you're building it up too much. But at some other point, I'll do an American accent, but not on this. But his American accent in this is like, he starts off like he's from like the Midwest, and then all of a sudden he's like from New York a little bit, and then it goes back to the Midwest, and it's like he chops and changes with his accent a little bit. Fucking, it's awful.
Oh yeah, his accent's not good in this at all. So, but yeah, I think in terms of how successful this movie's been, I think that was a big thing for a lot of people. You know, Daniel Radcliffe is, and for a lot of people, you know, the absolute, you know, proper fanboys of Harry Potter, you know, they will always see him as that role. Boomer does say there was his first to try an American accent on screen. He thinks he's better now. Because I've not, you know what? It's one of the things that's a gap in my viewing.
Yeah.
I've never actually seen Woman in Black.
Yeah,
that's
like,
set in.
I have seen it, but I can't remember a lot about it.
That's set in England, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
this is the first time he tries American accent. He's definitely got better at that. He is right about that.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things. Like actors will always do. I remember, you got to remember at this time as well. Like even when Harry Potter finished, Daniel Radcliffe's still a young man.
Mm.
You know, I mean, he's only a couple of years older than I am, I think. So if this came out in 2013, you'd have been maybe 24, something like that. So you know that's still really young, and considering, you know, the amount of movies and money that he's probably made at that point, you know, I think he's definitely going to want to stretch his wings and try some new stuff.
Yeah.
So, anyways, one of the issues, right? Because obviously the general premise around this is that, you know, he starts to grow these horns and develops. Would you call it a superpower?
So the way I see it is, that bit where he goes, "I pray for your death. I pray for the devil to basically take vengeance," type thing. That line bit, right?
Yeah.
That basically is when, well, the devil's a fallen angel. So he's like, well, here's my power, fucking go do it. And he gets basically the devil's powers. The whole serpents, the whole telling the truth thing, what's your inner desire. It's like Lucifer, you know what I mean? The fucking TV show. It's that's the sort of powers he gets, and I really like those sorts of shit. You know what I mean?
But this is one of the things, like, right? So, how would you define his powers?
Well, they're technically demonic, really.
Yeah, but what can he do?
Well, he can make you tell the truth. You can't fucking kill the bastard. He can, so whatever your inner desire is, he can suggest it, and you'll do it. Because, well, the doctor, when he's cutting the horns, you know,
yeah,
oh, why don't you two just fuck then? So they start shagging. You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. It's like he says it to the father. It's the sin you can live with. That's the things that he brings out in people.
Okay, so this is kind of what I want to talk about, though,
like,
because
shit.
Obviously at no point in the movie do we really define exactly what his powers are, or what the rules of his powers are, and it does feel like I think anyway, as the movie goes on, that the movie gets really confused because they're constantly focusing on the different things that he can do. You know, when he first starts to grow the horns and is, you know, going to the doctors, for example, we get that scene where he's in the waiting room, you know, and the mother of the child turns around to him and is like, oh, I would really like to, you know, kick my kid in the ass. I would really like to. Oh, I think we've actually just lost Nico. You'll come back in a second. He really wants to, you know, she really wants to kick the kid in the ass. You know, she wants to have an affair. She tells him about all this other stuff that she's going through. And then we also sort of get, you know, the receptionist telling us what she thinks. And that's all fine. You know, that's all fine. That defines what some of his powers are. But we do kind of just seem to lose that as the movie goes on a little bit, in my opinion. And I think it causes the movie... Nico just meant, it's gone. I know you're gone, Nico. I think he's trying to come back in. How successful he's coming back in, I'm not 100% sure. Nico, can you hear me?
There we go, I can hear you now.
There you go. I like how you text me saying it's gone. You're gone from the screen. I know you're What I was just saying there.
Oh, okay.
I haven't got.
I didn't know if it was like.
Well, we still don't have your video feed, Nico, but it's okay. We can carry on. There you are. Nico suddenly just had an opportunity for 3 seconds to strip off naked.
Right.
What? Yeah. What? So, anyways, that's what I was saying. We get that scene in the waiting office where the mother tells him about how she really wants to sort of kick her kids in the ass and tells him about all these sexual fantasies that she has and the fairs and blah blah blah, and that's all fine.
Yeah.
And then we get that scene with the doctor. We got that scene previously with the girl from the bar who he slept with, but we kind of seem to just sort of drift away from that, and then we focus on some of the other abilities that he then gets, and for me it just kind of gets a bit muddled, and then you factor that in to the fact as well that we're also trying to be funny, and we're trying to figure out who did this murder, and we're trying to figure out if who was actually in love with who, and blah blah blah. There's just so much going on in this movie, and don't get me wrong, all this stuff, it does trigger some really good scenes and some really funny scenes. Boomer brings up the reporter fight scene was pretty funny. I think that scene in that whole doctor scene was also pretty fucking funny. The scene in the bar that we talked about where the guy gets his dick out, I think that all of that is pretty funny, but I just think there's just too much going on in this film.
See, I don't think so. I think it's these powers are building and building, so that's why it starts off quite mild, and then it gets bigger and bigger. If you notice, he's controlling one person at a time, then it's two, then it's three, four, then it's a whole fucking bar. It's that sort of thing. It's the progression of the power I quite like.
Would you like to have this powers?
Oh fuck yeah!
Of course you would, you dirty bastard.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine? Right, there's somebody just fucking coming out with fluent bullshit, and you go, "Are you sure about that?" And they go, "Yes, I'm just lying for the attention." You'd just be like, "Tell the audience."
So you would like to have this power. Would you really like to know what people actually think about you and your situation and choices? Because it actually gets sort of turned back on him later in the movie, when he goes and sees his parents, because he really finds
his father especially.
Yeah, because he finds out that they actually believe that he killed his girlfriend, and that they're only really standing by him purely for the fact that he's their son, and that's the sole reason. Would you like to know what people actually think about you?
Oh fuck yeah, I don't care if folk think I'm a cunt. I'm quite fucking happy with that, to be honest.
I mean, the whole world knows you're a cunt.
Pretty much. Most of my friends would say that to my face anyway, so do you really think I'm going to care if somebody else says it?
No, I know, but there is kind of that aspect, isn't there? Like, listen, everyone has a moan about everyone else from time to time, and it's a social thing as well. Like, we don't all want to hear that people, are completely don't like the choices we make or the things that we do or how we act, because for a lot of us that's part of our personalities. That's maybe aspects of our whole lives that they're saying that they either disapprove of. And I mean, I don't really necessarily think it would matter coming from strangers, people you don't really associate yourselves with, but if this is coming from your close friends, and in this case, his actual parents, that's maybe something that's going to hurt. I'm very sure that there's plenty of shit that I've done that neither of my parents really approve of, but I don't need to know that.
But you got to realise something. I'm in my 40s, so my father, if he came out with anything like that, I'd just be like, well, you were a big fucking letdown, and where were you the whole life, so fuck off. And so I wouldn't give a flying fuck about that. And my mother has told me to my face how much she thinks I'm a cunt sometimes, so it's fine. No, I've told her to.
Well, no, that's it as well. I know, I get that it comes down to...
You gotta remember, we're from Scotland, and we fucking hurt our friends more than we ever hurt our enemies.
Well, that's it. Like, obviously, it's... That's true.
Am I wrong about that? Like, it's one of those things where we can call him a cunt, but you can't.
Yeah, but we also have, 12 different actual definitions, because you've got a sound cunt, a funny cunt, an actual cunt. Like, there's loads of different things. I'm not actually sure I think that word is Twitch safe. I think it's YouTube that's not a safe word to use.
Oh shit, I never thought of that.
If it's not Twitch safe, we're sorry. Boomer says it wouldn't be bad as long as I could turn it off when I went to work. That might not be nice. Fair.
But I get some people wouldn't like that. I get some people wouldn't like the truth being told to you. You wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
But if you're comfortable about yourself enough, you genuinely wouldn't give a flying fuck.
But that's the thing.
And
a lot of people, and I would actually say the majority of people out there, aren't really truly comfortable with themselves.
Yeah, like I'm a podgy fucking 40-year-old who doesn't give a flying fuck about anything, so I genuinely would love those powers.
Apart from this podcast, he loves this podcast.
Yeah, I yeah. But I do have a problem with the podcast. I'm not allowed to be naked anymore.
That is very much a you problem, Nico, and everyone else is delighted.
Never did see the fucking stats to that poll you said whether I should have clothes or not.
I don't think I actually ever actually put it out because I was scared of the answer.
Oh shit! I'm fucking joking.
I want to sort of bring it back a little bit because Boomer made a comment earlier in the chat that I kind of missed, but it is something that I want to sort of bring up. This movie is directed by Alexandre Aja, which Boomer didn't know about, and he says this seems to be a bit of a departure from his regular stuff because Alexandre Aja has sort of became, he does have quite a few horror credits to his name now. He has become somewhat of a genre director and producer. He directed the Hills Have Eyes remake. He directed this. He directed Mirrors, Piranha 3D. He directed Crawl. He was also a producer. He was also a producer on the Maniac remake, which also is I was going to say it's also Daniel Radcliffe. It's not. It's Elijah Wood. So he has become somewhat. But would you say, given that sort of filmography, that Horns is really sort of a departure for him? I'd actually say it's kind of on brand because he goes for the weird and wonderful a little bit, doesn't he?
Yeah, I was thinking that because, well, yeah, it's a lot. This movie is totally weird. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough of this movie. But if you can get into it, it's really good, I think. It's better the second time you watch it because I remember the first time thinking, but rewatching it for this, I actually liked it more.
You know what? It's one of the few things, Nico, that we'll probably agree on in the history of this show. I think I genuinely do agree with you a little bit. I obviously have issues with this movie. I think a lot of other people also have issues with this movie. But when I came away with it, I did enjoy it.
Yeah,
I did kind of enjoy it. One of the things that I want, and well, it kind of links to that. I enjoyed this movie. You obviously ended up enjoying this movie. Given everything we sort of know about it, do you think this movie really deserves to be kind of forgotten in the way it has been? Because this movie has just been completely forgotten, really. Again, we probably would have never covered this movie unless your friend had recommended us to do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Requested us to do it. I certainly don't think. Maybe years down the line when we were starting to run out of movies to cover, and we're like, oh, we've not done this random one from 2013, let's fucking do it.
Yeah.
But given all of that, do you think this movie really stands out enough for it to be remembered as a good genre movie?
See, that's the thing. It doesn't really fit in a genre. I think that's part of its downfall. Because we're reviewing it on a horror podcast, but it's only got elements of horror. It's not a proper horror movie.
No, but we've done that before. That's obviously something that's under that we class as being under our remit because we do sort of horror adjacent movies. We do sort of kids horror movies. We did for example, we've done Hocus Pocus, for example. That's not a horror movie, but it's a family friendly with horror themes. We do horror comedies that aren't scary. It's all encompassing. It's one of those things that I think we'll always say. people still turn around to us and say, oh, you know, Alien isn't a horror movie or Event Horizon isn't a horror movie because they're sci-fi. Well, you know what? Horror can be more than one thing. You know, films can be more than one thing.
But I mean, those are ones that stick to it, so you can't get that confused whether it's a horror or a sci-fi or both.
Yeah.
This one, it gets forgotten about because it's not really a horror, but it gets boxed in that horror bracket, if that makes sense. And I think that's to its downfall, because this, as you said, is a Greek tragedy type thing, which was a very, very good way of saying what this is. Because if you like that shit, fuck off, right? If you like that type of shit, you're gonna love this movie. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a sucker for those things. You know what I mean? I love those Greek tragedies. I love those like Shakespearean fucking things where it's they die at the end fucking holding each other's hand. You know what I mean? I like that sort of shit. I'm a cheesy bastard.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? Because I do feel like that this movie is very sort of Romeo and Juliet, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's actually, yeah. Fuck off and coming out with the goodies, you cunt.
Well, maybe if you maybe if you just thought of them quicker, Nico.
I can't. I'm just thinking up myself. I'm sort of like beating around the bush, and then you come out with a fucking you pluck it fame just beforehand, you bastard. But yeah, it's like as you said, the red herrings that it throws in, it doesn't need to really do that because I think the whole emphasis on the brother puts it off a little bit, but then ties it back in at the end, which sort of works, but sort of doesn't at the same time.
Yeah.
There are problems with the movie, right? I'm not saying this is the perfect movie, but it's one of those ones. There's something here for everyone if you can watch it till the end.
Yeah, I think for me, as an overall, I still think this movie is it's just too long. It goes on for too long. It is confusing. However, I think there's enough enjoyable stuff in there that it does mean that, you know what, see, I wouldn't probably watch, I don't think I'm going to watch this movie probably again this year, but, you know, maybe in like a year's time, I might get that itch, and if I see it pop up, I might say, hey, you know what, I'll chuck it on, you know. I think it's one of those movies that you might watch 2 or 3 times and then probably be done with it.
I think it's one of those ones, you know how when you're looking through Netflix and you're like, oh, sorry, there's other streaming services as well. When you're looking through them and you find
this isn't the BBC.
You come across
this isn't the BBC,
accident.
Nico. We can just say Netflix.
So when you know how you spend like 2 days flicking through something and you're like, no, I can't, no, I can't, no, I can't, no, I don't like this, no, I don't like that. But you're there with your partner or somebody else, and then they go, oh, have you seen this? And you're like, yeah, it was actually quite good. And then you end up putting it back on. I think it's one of those ones. You know what I mean? It's like you'll both tend to agree or you'll say it's a good movie to somebody. But unless you see it, you won't remember it.
Well, I mean, I think this is the true issue I think I have with this movie. And this is maybe not so much the issue that I have with this movie, but I think this is potentially the issue that people have with this movie. So this is, we've already said, you know, this can kind of come under the horror banner, right? But you know, it's very limited on that. We've already spoken about the murder mystery aspect of it and how, you know, that's probably the weakest part of this movie. So if you're wanting murder mystery, there are other movies that are out there that are much better at it. If you're wanting, you know, comedy, then yes, this movie does have some good comedy. A lot of the comedy in this movie lands, but once again, I just think there are other horror comedies out there that do it so much better. And then if you're wanting that sort of love story aspect, yep, this movie's got it. It does it relatively well, but again, there are other movies that have, and I think that's the issue. This is a perfectly competent movie. It's a fine movie. It's a movie I'll rewatch, and I'm probably going to give it a relatively good score. But I think when you take every single aspect of what this movie actually is, there are just other movies out there that have done it better.
But what Greek tragedies do you know that are better than this?
Anything by Shakespeare.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's not done by Shakespeare. It's a modern take on something. The thing is, it's not even a modern take. It's fresh. It's nice. I
No,
quite like
no,
that.
no, no. I get that. I get that, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not sitting here saying that this doesn't have some sort of individual aspects of
Oh
why
no, I'm not
you would
saying that
choose
either.
this movie. I just think if you take the genres as a whole, and if that's really what you're
Yeah.
wanting, there's other stuff out there that's just, better than this movie. And that's why I think,
Like, for example,
but that's why I think it's gotten lost in the shuffle.
yeah, like if you're looking for a modern take on a Shakespearean thing, like Romeo and Juliet, for example, with DiCaprio, I'd rather watch this than that.
Oh yeah, I'd rather watch this than that. But that movie was a
Yeah.
hell of a lot more successful than this one.
Yeah, but I'm just using that as an example. That's the only thing that you can really relate it to in the genre of films that it is, because there's not a lot of those Greek tragedy movies.
Yes, but
There's not a lot of movies like this.
But this is what I'm saying. Because it mishmashes so many different subgenres, you're right. There's not a lot of movies like this. But because of that, I think it detracts away from each one of those subgenres that this tries to be. Because essentially, you're spending 2 hours trying to fit in 4 different things.
But I think it's not trying to fit in those 4 different things. I just think it has elements of those 4 things in it. I'm looking at it from the other perspective.
I think again, I just think it's I think it's too much, and I think it detracts from each single one. If I want a horror comedy, I ain't watching this movie. I'm picking, one of the bigger ones, but even then, like, even if I'm picking one that some people might not think is as good as this movie, I'm picking one that's maybe slightly truer to that subgenre. If that makes sense, if one that's maybe more focused on being a horror comedy. If I'm watching a murder mystery movie, I'm maybe not watching a horror murder mystery movie. I may be watching a more action-y based one, or something that's more sort of, Clue vibes. It's just, I just think, and you'll be happy to know that Boomer's agreeing with you, Nico. He says you would normally agree with me, but this one for him is greater than the sum of its parts. I think the opposite, to be honest. I think the opposite to that. He also says, but how many of those movies also contain a treehouse shag? I think we're losing Nico again.
And the thing is, all the parts of this fit well. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. Can you hear me again?
Yes, we can. We're fine.
Yeah. So you're saying that it's yeah. So I think all these little bits together, the sum of its parts make it better than what it is. I think because I think they slot in very well together. I think as I said, the treehouse shag scene is a very tastefully done one. It's not one of them. It's just there for the sake of it. It is though. I think the murder mystery thing that does let down a bit because they let the cat out of the bag a bit too soon. As soon as you see that necklace, you know it's him. And I think they should have waited. I think they put the brother possibly being the killer before that would have worked better.
No, they did. They did put that before that.
Did they?
Yeah.
I thought they put the necklace thing first.
No, I don't think so. It was the brother first, wasn't it? I think it was the brother first. I think so. Anyways.
Okay. Well, I thought they put the necklace first anyway. But yeah, they basically let the cat out of the bag when he's not affected by it as well.
Yeah.
And that is like the only. Oh, it must be because you're such a good man, and he's a lawyer for a start, so you're lying. Fuck off. And that's why I think it's. I like the whole fact that his parents have a go at him telling the truth because that's relatable to parents that hate their own kid because I know a lot of people that are like that. Fucking, they'd love to tell them what they think of their kids, but they want them to be a better person, so they never do. In this movie, they see somebody doing that and see how much it hurts somebody, not that it makes them feel better, so they know that they're doing better for that.
Yeah,
it's the sum of its parts make it better than what it is. I think.
Okay, I think we're gonna disagree on this one again, but
yeah,
It is what it is. What
We
I think,
agree that it's a decent movie, though.
yeah, I think we're in. I mean, we're in general agreement. I think we're just in disagreement about more specific aspects of it, not rather than this movie as a whole. I think one of the things for me when we
I think
talk,
we're coming from the opposite ends of the spectrum for it. That's all
yeah,
it.
I think one of the things for me as well is there's because there's so much polarization between, you know, the comedy aspects of this, but when this movie decides to get dark, it kind of gets really fucking dark, because you've got, you know,
Yeah.
these funny aspects. You've got that scene in the doctor waiting room. You've got that scene in the bar, you know, with the guy getting his dick out, and then later in when we find out what actually happens to Merrin, for example, you know, she gets beaten and fucking raped by a friend, and it's just like it gets so fucking dark, and
She gets raped while she's dying. It's fucking brutal.
this is what I'm saying though, and this is part of the reason why I feel like that this movie doesn't really know what it was. It's tonally all over the place.
But I think that tone works well because,
Which tone
like,
though? Because there's about 12 different ones in this film.
But that's what I mean. Life's not black and white. It's all about different tones, and I think this fits a lot of them together very, very well. Because this one, you see the light moments in life. You get these powers and you use them to fucking go into a bar and take the piss out of a guy fucking getting his dick out. You know what I mean? I set your bar on fire. That's fine. You get all that funny parts because life has funny parts in it. But life also has a lot of sick, fucked up shit that you never want to happen to you. And this movie does all of that.
Yes, it 100% does. But do people really want to experience that in the space of a 2-hour movie that's supposed to be, you know, a bit of a light-hearted sort of murder mystery love romp?
But see, that's the thing. I don't think this is a murder mystery love romp, even though it has aspects of that in it.
But right, okay.
Because
But what I'm saying is
none of Shakespeare's stuff was like that. Like all of his stuff was fucking rise, fall, everything fucking ends in a bitter fucking disappointment. And this has a lot of that in it.
But what I'm saying is, right, like we've spent quite a lot of time now, you know, discussing this and going over this.
Yeah.
Does that not just prove the sort of levels of... Does this not prove, like, obviously you like these aspects of it, right? And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. And I dislike this aspect, but the fact that we're spending so much time talking about this, we're spending so much time about, you know, the tonal changes of the film, we're spending so much time about the different sort of subgenres of the film, does that not just explain why this film really was forgotten? Because there's...
Not really. I think it was forgotten because of when it came out. I think everyone was seeing Daniel Radcliffe the way he was, and then he's in this, and they're like, that's not what we paid to see. We wanted to see him be happy. And through this film, he's not really the like at the start it's hero being played, right? So it's emphasizing that he's the hero of the movie. And all the way through it, he's not that nice a guy. He's not a good guy. He's none of that shit. But he's the hero at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the start, his mate is the hero keeping him out of jail, but he's actually doing that to ease his own conscience by the end of it. You know that because he's the one that fucking raped her while she was dying. You know what I mean? So it's the whole how perspective of people can be seen as something totally different, and it's all of that shit wrapped up in one. And it I think it gets lost in the mix because folk didn't want to see him do that. See if he made this movie nowadays, it would probably be right up there.
You think it would be a lot more successful today if this was released in 2023 than 2030, a decade later? Do you think this maybe was just a movie ahead of its time?
I genuinely do, because it's something that I would definitely revisit again. I know I would. I would now recommend it to people a lot more. But back then, I forgot about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think, you know, again, you know, we sit there, you know, it's worth pointing out because, you know, again, Boomer makes a good point in the chat. It's worth noting, like, we're in agreement that we generally kind of like this, right?
Yeah.
We're both in agreement that this isn't the greatest thing we'll ever see.
Yeah.
You know, and that there's definitely drawbacks to that. You know, there's just disagreements from us about what those drawbacks actually are.
Yeah.
Boomer makes a good point. He's like, at the end of the day, I think we can all agree They Live is absolutely fantastic, but not what people think is the upper echelon of horror. And it is possible to think, and we've talked about that before with some of the movies we've reviewed. You know, there can be some sort, and not that I'm saying that this is one of them, because I do think this film does require a certain level of, you know, sort of focus when you're watching it. This isn't a popcorn film that you can just.
This isn't a Netflix and chill. That's for
sure.
This
isn't a Netflix and chill. You know, this isn't a Freddy versus Jason. You know, you can just chuck on. You can spend 90% of the movie sort of scrolling through your phone, but it's on in the background kind of film. You do kind of have to.
That's not a normal Netflix and chill, by the way.
What,
if you're scrolling during a Netflix and chill, mate, you need to like check what that means.
I mean, I'm going for popcorn film. You're the one that's bringing up Netflix and chill.
You gotta admit, if you were pulling to this movie, there's something seriously wrong with you. You might
like the dick in the bar. You might like the little tit you get in the treehouse.
It's a lovely tit in the treehouse, I'm not gonna lie.
See, there you go.
I'm not gonna be like, alright, and how's it going?
Just to point out, because obviously you kind of mentioned there, you know, what else was happening around this time. 2013 was a mixed bag year for horror movies. This is some of the other movies that had come out. So, the Evil Dead remake came out in 2013, which, you know, for me, having now looked down the list of what actually came out, was probably the movie of the year. Would have been my movie of the year.
Yeah.
But there was some other stuff. World War Z, which we've also reviewed, came out, which was obviously a pretty big hit. VHS 2, Texas Chainsaw 3D, Pro Wrestlers versus Zombies, Nico.
I think I've actually seen that.
Yeah. What else is coming out there? You've also got I Spit on Your Grave 2, Hatchet 3, Fright Night 2.
Is that the one, I Spit in the Grave, where it's a different girl?
Yes.
I think so.
The Conjuring came out this year as well, which is probably the most successful one from the year, but I think Evil Dead's better than The Conjuring. Curse of Chucky. So, you know, there's the Carrie remake with Chloe Grace Moretz. So it was a mixed bag of a year, and I think the problem is, you know, if you look down that list of movies, there's only really sort of 2 or 3 of them that people really sort of bang on about, and I think in general it was probably just a bit of a forgettable year for horror as well.
Yeah. But you had some absolute bangers in that year, and then shite.
Yeah.
I think this just got lost in the mix, to be honest. But I genuinely do think the way that this is now, though, the way that this movie is, if it had slightly better special effects and it came out now, it would be a massive hit.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think it was a bit before its time.
Boomer also brings up in the chats the scene where the 2 police officers, you know, get together, which is
Would you rather suck each other's dicks?
and then they do.
Yeah.
Because they got a happy ending, well, until the shotgun to the face.
I know! I never expected that shotgun to the face, I must admit.
There's a couple of things. Just one other thing that I really want to bring up before we sort of move things along. One of the big sort of plot, obviously one of the major plot points of this movie is the fact that just before she dies, Marin breaks up with Iggy.
Aye.
And, you know, she gives them this sort of excuse, which we later find out is, you know, because, you know, she had a terminal illness, and that's the true reason. But she wanted to make him hate her. Was it hate her just enough to, like...
Just enough to forgive me later on.
Yeah. Can I just say, what a load of fucking bullshit.
Nah. I could see people do that.
I can see people doing that, but I think that's bullshit, and I think that's a coward's way. A coward's way, Nico. Literally, when we were watching this movie, I turned to my partner and says, if I get sick, I am taking you down with.
I think that is a very, very brave choice to do, and very hard for somebody to do.
I think it's a difficult choice. I'm certainly not disagreeing. I think it's a very difficult choice. I think it's a stupid choice.
I think it's putting the person's needs above your own, and basically not one. Because as she says, she saw her mother go through that and it destroyed her father. So she's not wanting to push that on somebody she loves. I think that's.
But she's not even. She's not giving him the option. And look what happened.
Exactly. Exactly. She's not giving him the option because she doesn't want
Yes, but she gives him the
him to
option and then he
experience that.
chooses. Then that's his choice.
Well, no, it's her choice if she doesn't want the support and that from him. It's her choice if she doesn't want him to
It's not that she
basically be
doesn't
hung up
want.
on her
It's
for the
not
rest
that.
of her life.
It's not that she doesn't want the support from him. She wants the support from him. She just doesn't want him to potentially go through the emotional trauma that also comes with that. And that ultimately is not her choice to make. That's his choice.
Well, it sort of is her choice because, put it this way, I could definitely understand where she's coming from. And if that was the case, good on her for doing that. Setting somebody free like that, and instead of them forever being in love with somebody that's dead and buried in their head, that will never ever give them the love that they could ever have.
But look what she ended up
And
putting him through.
but she didn't know that his best mate was going to rape and kill her, did she? That's
No.
not two things that are code. That's just happened in the movie. That's not two things that are definitely going to happen, is it?
No, absolutely
Oh,
not. But it's what happened.
aye, but here's the thing: she's doing what she thinks is right for him. It might not be, but she's doing what she thinks would be better for her to basically put herself through what was going to happen and set him free from any fucking responsibilities of what she thought was going to happen.
Mm. I again, Nico, it's the major theme of our podcast. I disagree with you.
Well, I think that is one of the bravest things anybody could ever do because seeing somebody go through something like that is one of the most painful things you'll ever see in your life.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I just think he should have had a choice.
But sometimes the person that's going to go through that needs to take that choice away from them.
I disagree. I
Well,
disagree. Anyways,
yeah.
we're going into philosophical talks there, and I don't think either one of us wants to stay here all night and discuss shit like that. So, Nico, is there anything else about horns that you want to discuss? If there's anyone in the chat who has anything else that they would like to bring up about horns that they would like to discuss as well, now is your time, Nico. You got anything else?
So, right, this is what we always say is practical effects are the best. The best practical effects are in this movie when it comes to that. Everything else, like their CGI stuff, when he's on fire,
yeah,
when he's changing into the demon at the end, all that stuff has not aged well. Like most of it looks gosh. The only one that still looked half decent is the one that it's the wings burn. That was quite cool, the wings burning up.
yeah. The snakes in that didn't look particularly great as well either, did they?
Oh, the snakes were fucking awful.
Yeah, that's definitely a big drawback for me for this film. The CGI in it is not good at all. I get the angel wings was okay. That still looks okay. It doesn't look
that's what I mean.
It doesn't look incredible,
but when he's walking about with the horns on and all that, that's quite cool. When he's actually fully in the demon fucking form, that looks actually pretty good as well.
yeah.
It's just changing into it that looks fucking horrid.
Yeah, there's definitely hits and misses with the effects in this movie, and unfortunately, the hits, yeah, they look fine, and some of it actually looks pretty cool, but the lows are bad.
Are low.
Like,
yeah.
The hits are nowhere near as high as the lows are low.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I would definitely agree with you. See, there you go, Nico. Something we agree upon.
And the bad guy in it, I do love the bit where he's like throwing the fucking petrol over him, and he's like, "This is going to be cool." Well, like that is.
It's one of those things as well because realistically, our hero in this dies with a good portion of the movie still to go, and
yeah,
I like that. That's something that generally doesn't happen in a horror movie. It's something, and this is one of the things I'm saying about this movie. Whilst I still stand by what I said about how there's mishmash and I think there's too much going on. There is still stuff that happens in this movie that I'm like, okay, that's a bit fresh. I like that, and I think that's part of what really contributes for me to overall just kind of liking this movie.
Yeah.
So, I would go with that. Anything else from you, Nico?
Nah, not really. I do like the progression of the movie. I think it's well paced and everything as well. I know you don't, but I think it's a very, very good movie.
Fair enough. Boomer says, I don't know why filmmakers continue to use CGI. Even something simpler that's practical looks so much better. I think, when you're talking about these big budget horror films, and you're talking about Marvel and all that sort of kind of movies, if when you've got the budget for it, that's fine. It looks fine. It's when it comes to, these horror movies that really don't look that great. The problem I think you have with a movie like this is that the premise of it is so out there that it probably would have been really fucking difficult to get practical effects for a lot of what's going on in this film. And I think that's what was really the issue with here. I agree that, and we're definitely, practical effects guys over CGI guys. But I think the premise of this movie didn't really lend itself over to having purely just practical effects throughout. And I think that's probably the issue we have here, especially when it is probably, we're not 100% sure because I don't actually know what the budget is, probably a relatively low budget movie.
Yeah.
So I would go with that.
Would like to know how much it was made for.
I know, I will keep digging and see if I can find out, but I couldn't find anything during my research for it, so we will just have to wait and see. If anyone has any, information about the budget of this movie, feel free to let us know. We'll still be here for a while, so it can drop us in the chat, and if not, if you're listening to this later, you can drop us an email or a DM on our social medias, which we'll give out at the end of the show. Shall we move on then to our next segment? The suspense is killing me.
Yes.
Yes, there we go. We are going to talk about some trivia. I don't actually have a lot of trivia, unsurprisingly, I think, for this movie.
Didn't think you would with this one.
I do have a few little bits. Obviously, we usually start off with the finances. Don't know what this was made for, but according to IMDb, this movie only made $3.8 million. So even if, this is a really, really low budget movie, that's not a lot of money.
See, this was out when I was going to cinema a lot, and I don't even remember seeing it in, coming attractions or anything.
No.
So I don't think the PR for this was as good as Blair Witch, let's put it that way.
No, and I think we should take that into account when we do the final ratings, Nico.
No.
Anyways, whilst filming this movie, because this movie was filmed in Canada, Daniel Radcliffe actually became really ill during the filming, which probably actually helped with how his character looked. He accidentally drank non-potable water from his sink tap in his trailer, which, unknown to him, was mixed with antifreeze.
Fucking twat.
So he became very, very ill for several days. So
never
basically
drink from a tap. Never ever drink from a tap when you're abroad.
Yeah, I mean, here we can drink from our tap water all day fucking long, Nico.
Yeah, but never do that when you're in London. Fuck
no. No. If you come to Scotland, though, feel free.
Scotland's got some of the best water in the world.
We have some of the best tap water in the world. Come and I think people genuinely get a bit shocked when they come to Scotland from other parts of the world and realise just how fucking good our tap water is, because our tap water is incredible.
Yeah. So it gets exported everywhere else.
Yeah. So don't drink the tap water in anywhere other than Scotland. There's probably a few other places in the world where it's also fine to drink the tap water, but by and large, it's just a general rule, isn't it? Just drink bottled water.
Yeah, pretty much. Just bottled.
Well, I know you like this part, Nico. So, originally cast in the lead role, but eventually replaced by Daniel Radcliffe, was Shia LaBeouf.
Thank fuck.
Would you not like to have seen that movie?
Because he would have... Well, he goes to next level. Then I don't think that would have worked with this.
He is like, and it's difficult to say this, he's like a low-budget Nicolas Cage. But
he's like a low budget Nicolas Cage.
But Nicolas Cage is just way fucking better.
Yeah. He's like... What's his name? I forgot his name. My Left Foot. What's his name again? He's like him that never breaks character. Billy Butcher in Gangs of New York. I've forgotten his name right now.
I know. I'm just
gonna kill me.
Okay, well you can.
In the name of the Father and everything. What's his name again? Anyway, he's like him who never breaks character when he's on set, and that just would not work for this movie because, as you said, it's like bits of other genres.
Yeah.
He'd have made it just one thing, and fucking it would have just been shite.
Okay. I have to say, I agree. I don't particularly like Shia LaBeouf on my screen in any movie, let alone in this one. So Boomer
He's good in death scenes.
Boomer does say that Nicolas Cage is a national treasure. In brackets, wink. I love Nick Cage. I love Nick Cage's movies.
Have you seen Renfield yet?
I haven't seen Renfield yet. I think.
You've got to. You've got to.
I've not seen Renfield yet.
Right. So Nicolas Cage said he would never play a vampire again, and when he read the script, he wanted to do it. I can understand why.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing it. I've got a feeling Renfield might be a dark horse later in the year for some of our awards. Just obviously I haven't seen it,
wrong.
But just based on what I've been hearing people say about it, I think it's generally been extremely well received.
If anybody else in the chat has seen it, just put if you liked it or not.
Boomer says it's so good.
Yeah.
Boomer loves
it's
it.
Fucking epic.
So
I've watched it twice already. It's fucking brilliant.
So there you go. Moving on anyway. Heather Graham, who we briefly mentioned earlier, was reprising her role once again as a diner waitress in a logger town where a young girl was mysteriously murdered. It's clearly Alexandra Aja playing homage to Twin Peaks, which she played the same role when she was just 20 years old at the time, which is why, you know, you're saying she plays it so well. It's a role she's done before.
Yeah.
Finally,
money hungry whore that she is.
Jesus Christ.
I mean the character. Do you not hear what she says about I'll get a boob job thing?
Yeah, okay. Finally.
Fucking hell! Your face was like, can't believe you just called her that. No, I mean in the character, you cunt.
I'm just such a good actor, Nico. You can't tell. Final piece of trivia that I have: Juno Temple, who plays Merrin in this movie, said that her and Daniel Radcliffe have a really. What's that?
Lovely tit.
Lovely tit. Just the one.
Just the one.
Okay.
I think it's this one, was it?
She said that she and Daniel Radcliffe had a funny moment while filming their sex scene. She thinks it was the first male-female sex scene that Daniel Radcliffe had ever done, and he was asking her advice because she had filmed several of them in her career beforehand. She just said, she said to him, I guarantee you that a few moments after we start shooting, you will be asked to put your hands on my bum cheeks. It will happen at some point. And 5 minutes into the shot, the director asked him to put his hands on her bare bottom, and Temple said, told you so.
Well, it's a very nice bottom. I would have easily done it anyway.
I just like putting my hands on a bottom.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie.
I like a bottom. I'm a
you like a bottom, do you? You okay there, mate?
No.
You alright?
No.
No. So it's a lovely tit, is it?
It's a lovely tit, you're right.
Lovely tit. Is that better?
I like a tit.
You like a tit?
I like a tit.
Not a bottom.
Not a bottom.
You like a tit?
I like a tit.
Just the one tit.
Just the one. Yeah.
Aye.
Okay. Yeah. Also, obviously, the character played by Juno Temple, Merrin, is a reference to The Exorcist. Father Merrin, of course, being a character in The Exorcist as well. So, Boomer says, "There's the promo clip."
Yeah. The promo clip is you like a bottom.
And you like a tit. There we go. Very good. Very good. Anyways, Nico, any other pieces of trivia that you've got about this movie?
Yeah, Daniel Radcliffe took the... No, I'm joking. I've got need. I've got a sip.
Okay, let's move on then to our next segment, our final segment of the podcast portion of this show. And let's talk about the ratings and the reviews. As always, we will start off with the critics' scores. IMDb scored this movie a 6.4 out of 10. Metacritic scored it a 4.6. Nico, what do you think the Rotten Tomatoes critics and audience scored this movie?
See, as I said, I genuinely have no clue with this. Because I don't know if the critics liked it or hated it. It seems like a movie critics would like. But I don't know, because I don't think it's been seen by a lot of people for the audience either. But everyone I've spoke to liked it. So it's a very confusing...
There's a whole lot of but they like it and they don't going on
Like Like, it seems like they'd like it, but there was no fucking shit. Right, so I'm gonna say 65 for critics and 72 for audience.
You're way off.
Fuck.
Rotten Tomatoes critics scored this movie 42%, with the Rotten Tomatoes audience scoring at 49%. Critics' consensus: Horns is a bit of a tonal jumble, but it offers enough thoughtful horror comedy and strong work from Daniel Radcliffe to hook genre enthusiasts. So I think, even though that's got a less than... What are we laughing at here?
Do you remember last week you said you were turning a critic?
Yeah.
Go read out what the critics said about it again.
Horns is a bit of a tonal jumble, but it offers enough... What?
What did you say this movie was a bit of a jumble, right?
Mishmash, I think, was the word I used.
Oh, okay. Mr. Critic.
Well, when they're right, they're right. I think in that statement, I think there is in that statement though, you know, there is a general acceptance, even though the score is low, that people like this film. You know, that there's an acceptance that this film does have appeal and will appeal to certain audience. So I think even though those scores are low, I think those scores are low. I think this movie deserves a slightly higher score. You know, we always throw it out as well to our listeners, our followers, our people here in the chat asking for your scores. Boomer's just given his score in the chat. He says 7 out of 10. But ask for your scores and opinions. So let's read a few of those out. Dissect That Film podcast says, it's been a while since I've seen this one. I would probably go with a 6 out of 10. I remember it being beyond weird and kind of slow. Radcliffe is fun to watch though. I think I would generally agree with that. The House That Screams, I thought it was a solid film. I loved the book by Joe Hill it was based on, so I'd give it a 7.5. So good scores there from our good friends over at the House That Screams podcast. Wren, who we've already talked about, I had to remind myself that I saw this. I think that's a good indicator of where I stand on it. I think the concept of the horns getting people to confess desires was interesting, but I was able to predict the killer way too early. It was fine. 5 out of 10. Never need to see again. Morgan the Passive Assassin gives it a 5, maybe. The first half is pretty good, but it kind of gets absurd in the end. I want to read the book, though. Alaska Girl 88 gives it a 6. Not a bad movie at all, but not one I would add to my rewatch list. Two Cheesecakes gives it a 6.5 out of 10. Solid acting until the climactic scene where there are some missteps. Interesting story and good mystery, but somewhat forgettable. A few head-scratching decisions from characters. And finally, Joe Smart says, I'd give Horns a 6.5 out of 10. I still don't understand why nobody has made a film out of Heart-Shaped Box, which was the first book to completely creep me out since I was a kid. Horns is a pretty solid adaptation with a good cast and talented director. So I think there's not a lot of there's no scores in those sort of below the 5 mark. I think at worst, people just think this is an average film. But I think for a lot of people, this movie is just a bit forgettable and unfortunate.
I sort of want that.
Oh, good, we're losing Nico. That's just Fabi. His connection's been horrendous tonight. I think so. Overall, what I'm saying is, I think I think there's a general.
Yeah, I do get what you mean. I do get a lot of what they're saying.
Okay.
Oh,
it's just popping in.
Mine's has been fine.
I could assure you right now, Nico, it has not.
it's not my connection.
Okay. It's funny because you're probably going to go drop out in a second.
It says it's strong.
Okay. Anyways, that just leaves. Sorry, no, it doesn't. On average, our followers, our listeners, all you guys, just gave this movie 6.1 out of 10. Okay. So that's all right. So Nico, on a scale, that just leaves me and you on a scale of 1 to 10. Not 1 to 10. We've never rated our movies on a scale of 1 to 10. On a scale of 0 to 10, Nico, what are you going to give Horns?
You're going to kill me for this, but I'm going to give it a solid 8.
8?
I'm going to give it a solid 8 because I think, as I said, the sum of its parts make it greater than what it is.
Wow, I really, really didn't expect you to give it an 8. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. there's that like I would definitely recommend this movie to 90% of people I know.
Wow,
You know, people that have emotions.
Are you saying that I don't have emotions?
No, but I know a lot of people who don't.
Okay. Wow, I'm really surprised by you giving it an 8. I really didn't expect you to give it a score that high. I'm definitely not going to be giving it an 8.
Oh, I know that.
I think this is a good movie, though. We've discussed it. I don't think anyone can say that I don't think that this is a good movie based on the. I just think there's too much. It's a tonal jumble, Nico. I just think the tone of this movie is so far all over the place. I do think there's issues with some of the. I do think there's some of the issues with some of the acting. I think there's issues with the CGI. Daniel Radcliffe's accent is all over the place. I just feel like this film doesn't really know exactly what it wants to be. However, I still think it's a very enjoyable movie with a lot of good funny bits in it. I think the murder mystery is a bit weak, but I do still like a murder mystery style movie, so I will give it props for that. And it did bring some fresh and kind of interesting aspects to the movie. So overall, I'm going to give it a 6.5.
Yeah. See, I took my points off for accent because it's awful.
Yeah.
It is. I took it off for the CGI, but as I said, if it had better CGI, it would be decent enough. I did take it off. There is some like bits in it that are just, but most of the acting is really, really good in it. I love the way Daniel Radcliffe tackled it, and I think it's a really good concept of a movie.
Okay, so there you go. There is the ratings. Boomer says, yeah, Nico, that still doesn't get you out of the doghouse for Blair Witch, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that Blair Witch should be like a 1, I think.
Absolutely
I might change
not.
that. I might change that score.
But he also says that that's higher than he thought I was going to give it as well.
So. That is true. I thought you were going to give it like a 5.
No, I think that I give 5s out for movies that I think are pretty bang average. And I do think this is better than average.
Yeah.
I just don't think this is great.
I do. I'm not going to lie. I think
it's
obviously a brilliant movie and I'd recommend it.
You've given it a fucking 8.
I know, I never expected to like it this much, to be
There
honest.
you go. Well, all of our scores combined with the critics' scores gives Horns an average score of 5.8 out of 10. And it means it's in 50th place of the now 71 movies that we have covered on the show. It is 1 place above Critters and 1 place below Halloween 2.
Yeah, I'd rather watch this over those two.
You know what? Yeah, I would probably agree.
Yeah.
I'd probably agree. Everyone knows that Halloween 2 is far from my favourite from that franchise, so I would probably agree. There you go.
So, yeah.
There you go.
We actually agreed on something else? What the fuck?
I know, that's a few. We've agreed on a few things tonight, Nico.
I know, I don't like it. What have you done with Ian?
Oh, well. Well, guys, that is going to do it for the podcast portion of this show. If you are listening to this on the download, thank you very, very much for downloading and listening to this episode. Don't forget, if you would like to support this podcast, you can do so at Damn Podcast on Twitter. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Pod of the Damned. You can email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com, and you can subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Pod of the Damned. If you are sitting about in the chat, or you are watching this on our Patreon, do not go away, because once the audio portion of this is over, we have our 2 exclusive live and Patreon segments coming up: Controversy Corner and our brand new buy or sell segment, which we love to do, Nico. So we'll be doing that just for you guys on the live episode and for you guys who subscribe to us on our Patreon, so stick around for that as well. Up next on the show, you've heard me talk about him quite a few times today because he's been chatting away for us in the chat room on the live episode. Boomer and his co-host Gabby are going to be joining us next week on the show, so it's going to be a full house next week. There's going to be 4 of us. So Nico finally might not get a word in edgeways, and we are going to be talking about, and now we said that Blair Witch Project last week was one of the most polarizing movies out there, and next week, for the first time on this show, we're going to be talking about a movie from possibly one of the most polarizing horror directors of all time, because we're talking about House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah, I think it is the most polarizing director in horror.
I think so too, and I'm sure that's going to be a big topic of discussion between the four of us. So please, that will be going out live next Sunday. So if you are wanting to watch us on the download, then do that. That'll be going live, like I say, on Sunday, the 4th of June. So
the big question is his wife in the movie?
Well, it's a Rob Zombie movie, isn't it?
Is she in there?
I think so.
Just a little bit.
Just a little. When we say a little bit, there's quite a lot of her, really. I think there's a bit of tit in that as well.
There's more than a bit, right?
There's only a bit of hers.
Oh, that's true.
So,
anyways, he's not exploited her to be a part of his wife.
Oh, good. So, anyways, that will be coming up next week on the show. But like I said, once again, Nico, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on again.
No problem at all. And thank you to everyone, again, who downloaded and listened to this episode. And until next week on the Pod of the Damned, just remember, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.